Guys, what we're going to be doing in this project video is we're going to be installing a GM factory spoiler on this 2015 Chevrolet Sonic. This video is going to apply to 2012 through 2016 Sonics, first generation ones. And you can sometimes get these in, used to be able to rather get these in the color of the body. This particular Sonic is a mocha bronze metallic color, for example. And I'll put the part numbers down in the bottom. All right, I just want to make sure I showed the part number as we were going through this, 95328355. So this will be the spoiler package, which is done in primer without already being pre-painted to your body color. Now, if we open this guy up, what we'll find inside is a couple of different things. Sorry about that, guys. I did not bring my cutter. Fortunately, the tape isn't that strong. What you're going to find in here is a couple of new trunk springs because of the additional weight of the spoiler. This is going to change what it takes to keep the hood up in the open position, so they're going to give you some of those to replace the ones you've got. There's going to be a kit with all of the wiring for the new brake light, all of the adhesive strips, all the tape-off strips, the template for the drilling, instructions that go through the complete installation process. And we're going to walk through this very much like we did on our fog light upgrade video earlier. But they're going to take you through step-by-step everything that's included, all the tools that you're going to need to do. We're obviously going to be doing this paint part first because what we've got here is going to be the primered one that I'll show you in a minute. And then we'll go through, after it's painted, the sub-assembly, getting the parking brake light put in there, excuse me, the stop light put in there, getting the fasteners ready to go, going through and identifying where it's going to be positioned, removing the interior trunk insulation and cover so that we can get access to drilling the holes, putting the template in position, marking the template holes, drilling them out, what sizes they get drilled, cleaning it off, going ahead and doing some anti-corrosion treatment of where you drilled the holes, getting the temperature right for the adhesive. This is a heat gun photo here. They're just showing you if you happen to do this in the winter time. If you're doing this in the summer, you're set. Going ahead and routing the wiring and getting the fasteners in position, getting the trunk propped up where you change out the springs. They go through all of that. Going over here after the springs, a lot of stuff to do here with removing and reinstalling the new springs. But after you get through that whole spring part, then you'll be left with the final electrical accessing through the back seat, taking off this access panel here. We're going to do all of this in the video, guys, just kind of running through it here so you see what's involved. And then doing the final electrical hookup and then reinstalling everything we took out of the trunk and seeing the final product. What this guy looks like in primer out of the box here. You also got, there's a piece of bracket for the brake light. This guy is not fiberglass, and then there's the brake light right there. I get this so it does not fall on us while we're going over everything. All right. So inside this foam material, when you get this, you want to really inspect it and make sure it's not damaged. This is a plastic type of spoiler in primer, probably a polystyrene type derivative, very lightweight, but that's what we're going to get. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go base coat, clear coat on this to match the factory approach, 3 coats of base and 2 coats of clear. I'll show you some glimpses of that, but we won't spend too much time on the painting piece. We'll mostly be focused on getting it installed. And you see here, this is the genuine GM markings and the part number of the individual spoiler itself out of the kit, 752-71812, which of course you can order as a replacement collision part. So let's get set up to paint it, and then we'll pick it up. All right, so let's take a look first at the instruction manual out of the kit. Let's see what we've got here. So the first thing is an inventory of the parts, so we can go through and make sure we've got all the major pieces that are included, and then they give you a quick overview of some of the tools you're going to need. You're going to need a drill, you're going to need a 3, 6, 8, and 9 millimeter drill bits, you're going to need a 20 millimeter hole saw. This is going to run the wiring harness. They're showing you that you're going to need a screwdriver, a small mallet, a flathead screwdriver, a trim removal tool, something to mark with, something to measure with, some PPE, some solvent and rags, gloves, and looks like you need some kind of a punch maybe for alignment. The very first step, of course, is to paint it because, like I showed you in the part number earlier, this kit is only in primer, so it's not in body color already, so we're going to have to paint it. They're telling you to pay particular attention to these covers that cover the studs. I'll show you that later when we get ready to install this, but those will be affixed on all of the pre-mounted studs on the bottom of the spoiler. The products we're going to be using to do this paint job are Nason products. I've been doing DuPont for a long, long time, and they switched to Nason a few years ago, so we'll be using full base for the base coat. We'll be doing 3 coats of base. This particular vehicle is going to be mocha bronze metallic, and we'll do a 15-minute wait between. And then we'll be using Select Clear for our clear coat. We'll be doing 2 coats of Select Clear. And for a small job like this, I'm just going to use a little detail gun. I mean, there's nothing fancy with this. This is a little Harbor Freight deal here. Looks like a 92 126. But for a small job like this little spoiler, that's all you need. Running 43 PSI for the base coat, probably 45 for the clear coat. And we'll do a 15-minute spread in between clear coats, and then we'll do a 20-minute spread between base and clear. So we'll go ahead and get the paint. I'm not going to show that because this video is not about painting. Let's go get that knocked out, and then we'll come back and get started on the assembly. All right, so the first thing we're going to end up doing is installing the brake light. So here's our spoiler. We're going to need that for this step. So we've let this guy sit for a while. And then in our kit, we have the tail light, brake light, and then we have some screws. All right, so there's this guy. He's going to sit like this, looks like. And we're going to want to run the harness inside and out. So this should be fun. We're going to have to get it routed through here and up through here. So we need like a little grabber tool. So I'm going to get that. And then she's going to sit like this. We'll take the adhesive off, and then we're going to take these 3 8mm bolts out. And that's what's going to secure it for this first step. All right, so make it something to fish the wire through. These are those little covers that we were seeing in the previous step that you got to keep on when you're painting because you don't want to get paint on the threads of these studs. All right, so we're going to take this tape off of here. Including this little piece of plastic debris. Alright, we're going to get that right where it goes. Get these 8s started. Trouble getting this guy going. And then we're just going to ratchet these guys in. All right, you guys don't need to watch me getting these things torqued down here. So now what about this hose? This wiring harness. How do we get this guy out of here? So the way we got this guy out of here is as you fish him in, you'll use a tool like this to grab here. So you'll be able to go in the back and you'll be able to fish this up, and then you'll be able to take your long nose pliers and you'll be able to grab the connector, get the hook out of the way, And then that's how you fish that through here. So you'll have to do a couple of tries at it. It's got a little trick to it because it's just barely enough room for it to fit in. So we're going to go ahead and get these guys tightened down all the way, and then we'll pick up with the next step. All right, so we've got these bolts in. Now we got to put these various insulation pieces in clips. So the clips look like this, and they slide in here. Just like that. And there's going to be one on the other side too. And then there's a donut that's foam that doesn't have stickiness that goes on this stud. This is just to protect where the two pieces made up when it hits your trunk lid, right? And then one here. Now the other thing they're showing two flat circles that are adhesive that cover up these holes here and here, and the kit includes those too. So those look like this. Just like that. Now we're going to keep working our way over. When we get to this stud, there's another little donut. But the center stud has a different kind of donut because it's a clip rather than, an actual metal stud. So it gets an adhesive donut to make sure it stays on there. Okay, and we'll go ahead and leave the paint cover off of this guy. Now continuing on, we've got another donut stud here. We've got another clip here. Okay. Now at that point, this section's done. Now the next section, there's a big donut around the wiring harness. Then there's these two outer adhesive pieces, long strip of tape on the bottom, narrower strip of tape on the top. This is the narrow strip of tape on the top. It's this black here. And then this is the tape they give you that's going to run along the bottom. So we'll cut and show this and come back. This piece here, all we're going to do with this is we're going to leave the red side facing up for when we mount it later, and we're going to go peel the white side off. And you want to get this where you don't cover that hole right there. All right. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And then for this guy, he's going to cover up the hole here like that. This is easier to do without having gloves on. Of course, we've got a breeze coming by. It makes things a little harder too. All right, so there's that guy. And then we have another piece that goes on the opposite end. Again, we don't want to cover up the hole. Okay, and then we missed one of these. Go back on this side, cover up the last hole here. All right, this step's done. I'm going to go cut that tape and we'll show you how it looks when we're done. All right, so now this is what it looks like. So the red strip is adhesive to help secure it, and the black strip here is just a weather stripping, just to keep water and moisture out from the tail end of the spoiler. So at this point, the spoiler is all ready to install, and we've completed this part of the instructions. So now we're going to move into the trunk area. All right, so we're going to open the trunk lid, and we're going to remove the liner. I'm going to show you how you take off some of these clips with a trim removal tool. and then we're going to take this plastic piece off of the latch. All right, so this plastic piece on the latch just slides off just like that. There's a couple of retaining clips, but as you can see, most of the time, at least one of them is missing, so that's why it doesn't hold on that well. And then these clips here on the trim tool, you can see like there's a side where you can get underneath it. The idea is to get underneath it without breaking it. And then when you open it like that, then you can take this one off. Right, so now we've removed this and it's completely intact and we can reuse it. Right, that end here you can see right here on the side where it's got a little bit of an opening so you can get underneath it with a tool. I'm just kind of resting my thumb on it while I give it pressure, just to keep anything from breaking. All right, so that came out just fine. And that came out just fine. So we're going to go ahead and pull all the rest of these off, and then with that out of the way, we'll be able to remove this liner. All right, with this and the 13 retainers pulled, then we'll be able to take the liner off of the trunk lid. Now you got to work this release handle through the slit, and then you can remove this, and then we can go to the next step. All right, with that step done, we close the trunk lid and we're back on the top. They want you to come down 20 centimeters, or about 8 inches, and find the top edge of the trunk lid. And the reason they want you to find that is that's going to help with the placement of this drill template. This drill template, put it like this where we can read it. All right, this drill template is going to lay along the back edge of the trunk lid, from here all the way over to here. So you can see there's like a line on it. And so we're going to need to get this positioned and taped down. That's the whole point of steps 6 and 7. So we're going to position that just like you see here. We're going to measure it off. We're going to line it up using these edges that tell you here, right? Match the picture with the tailgate round edge. When they say tailgate, they mean trunk lid. It's just a little bit of a translation of English problem here. Right? This is the edge line. That's all that matters. So we're going to get this set up so that we know where to drill. All right, guys, I wanted to double check this template here at the salvage yard. Grab a couple of these Sonic trunk lids that had the factory spoiler, and we've taken our template and we've got it lined up dead on with these holes. In fact, we can see this particular hole. The factory one's going to be oblong. We're not going to be able to replicate that, nor are we required to. Just a hole here. Here, here, here. You see I've poked a hole in the center where I can put a little pin in and do some detailed measurements. So what I want to do is compare each of these points to the end of the trunk lid along with this line on the template and the instructions that they gave us, right? Because when I first put this on the vehicle that we're trying to do this with, you would instinctively think to put the edge of this template along the edge of the trunk lid. And that doesn't measure out to the instructions. And so this allows me to see what they were trying to do. Now this actually also, this line from here to here, isn't exactly the same as what's in the instructions either. So that's why I like doing a double check on something that's official like this. All right, guys, now we got the template off this. You can see where I was mentioning before about how this is kind of like an oblong cut with the factory version of the spoiler, and this is an oblong cut. And the other thing I wanted to show you was, while they are going to tell us to use a 20, the factory one is actually closer to a 30. Just pointing out the differences. It doesn't matter, but it's a way you can tell if you've got a original RPO spoiler option D59, or if you've got something like what we're doing, which is dealer installed accessory. All right, guys, so we've got this on our vehicle now. So if we go back to the instructions, right, what they were telling us was to measure out 20 centimeters from these 3 points. And what we found was, from the salvage yard unit, we found that the template is just slightly skewed. Probably not enough to be concerned about, but I'll tell you what we found out. So we measured those 3 in inches, and what we got with this was 7 and 27 30 seconds. 7 and 27 30 from this line to the edge of the trunk. 1 inch off. So come in 1 inch, measure from the back, and then just to make the visual really resonate, I'll just show you the tape measure. Right, so we'll just come in about 1 inch right there. We'll come down, and we'll come down to this line, and you can see that's where we were at. And then in the center, what we found was 7 and 15/16, so lining up with this mark here, this hole here, from this line to the edge. And then from this line, this edge to this line, we found was also 7 and 15/16. Boy, that's a tongue twister. And what that works out to is just a little over 20 centimeters, 20.1 or 20.2 centimeters. So that's what that works out to. You just be, kind of wanting to curl up like it was in the box, but you just don't want it to have wrinkles. Wrinkles could add up to either a 1/16 of an inch off here and there, and then tape it down where you can pull it off. So at this point, we are ready to do the drilling. And we'll get our equipment out here. As you can see, they tell you what you need. They want you to drill a 9mm here, an 8 here, an 8 here, a 6mm here, an 8 here, a 20mm here, so you're going to need a hole saw, an 8 and a 9. So we're just going to need an 8, a 6, a 9, and a 20mm hole saw, and that'll complete what this is. On the inside, we're going to go put something to catch the shavings. So we're going to actually do that first, then we'll drill this out. All right, guys, I've got something inside to catch the shavings. I'm going to be coming in with a 2mm and doing a pilot hole first on each of these. I'll use the little holes that we punched in the template that we're using as part of our measurement at the salvage yard. This little piece of foam I've got on here is just, as the drill bit goes through, there's going to be a tendency for it to bounce down. And this is very, very thin sheet metal on the back of these Sonic trunk lids on these sedans. So if you don't have something there, you could get a dent, and you could notice that ripple outside what the spoiler is going to cover. So this is just an assurance so we don't have that problem. See, that one I was able to catch before it went all the way through. That's the ideal outcome. So we're just going to go through and pilot hole all of these like that. All right, guys, so like the instructions showed, we're going to need a 6mm, an 8mm, a 9mm, and a 20mm hole saw. We're going to do 9, 8, 8, 6, 8, 20, 8, and 9 again. So 9 on the ends, 8 all through the middle except for the very center, and then there's this one where the wiring harness is going to run through that's 20. So now what do we got to do? Well, now we got to do a little bit of cleanup. So we're going to come through here with a circular file, and we're just going to work any rough edges off. Doesn't take long. I'm just going to show you this middle one. You just want to get all the rough edges off. And then sometimes, this one we don't have this problem. This one we really don't have the problem, but this one we have the problem. You can see there's like a little bit of a bend here. In some cases, when the drill bit makes its final penetration, it might grab this very thin sheet metal. We're going to come in here with a plastic hammer, and we're going to just work these dents down. Now, why do we care? Well, we just want to make sure it's flush so we can get the seal on the spoiler on here, because we don't want any leaks. So that's the only thing we're going to do is prep, then I'll bring you back when we're ready to put the rust treatment on. All right, so going back to our instructions, right? So we measured and we taped our template down. They show doing a punch. Like I mentioned before, I don't recommend using a punch because it can create a dimple in this thin sheet metal. But if you choose to do that, just be warned. And then they talk about using a 3mm pilot hole. I chose to use a 2mm. And then, like we just went over, 9mm on the outside edge, 8mm everywhere except for dead center is 6. And then the last guy is a 20mm hole saw. When you get this all done, we're going to clean the surface off with isopropyl alcohol. They don't really specify the chemical to use. You could also use probably bug and tar remover or anything like that, but we want to get any of our skin oils off of here. Hopefully you did not use any cutting oil. That would be a bad thing to do, because that's going to make it difficult for the adhesive to stick unless you give a very thorough cleaning. Now we're going to go over to this side. So now what they're telling you to do is they want you to put this rust proofing chemical that's included in the kit. So if we open up our bag, it's this little guy here, this little brown tube. And if we open this guy up, what you'll see is all this is a type of grease. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just not a long-lasting thing. So I'm going to deviate from the instructions a bit. I'm going to just put touch-up paint. In the case of this Mocha Bronze one, it's a 1936 7829. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over with the brush end. Once we've filed all of these out and we've smoothed them out as best we can, then we're just going to come through and we're just going to go right around the edge with touch-up paint. We're going to do this to all these holes, and we're going to let it dry for 20 to 30 minutes. Now, if you spill any on the outer side like I did, you can just use some paint thinner and get it off later. But I'm going to go ahead and do this. Don't necessarily have to keep you guys for all of them. And then what I'm actually going to do is, after the paint dries, then I'll put this grease that they gave us on there. This will give us a more lasting anti-corrosion approach than what they're recommending alone. All right, guys, it's been sitting long enough after we put the paint on. We're going to go and do this step like I said anyway. They're telling you here that you want to make sure it's at least 70 degrees. So if you're doing this in the wintertime, they're suggesting using a heat gun just to slightly warm everything up. That's for the adhesive when we pull these strips off the actual spoiler so they stick properly. Now, I've already come in here and done this grease, but I'll show you, just the technique here real quick. So you're just going to give it like a squeeze. Get it on this applicator. And you're just going to run it around this hole, right? Just like that. And it's okay if you see a little bit of it, and around the edges. That's okay. And we're just going to put that on all of these holes, including this large one, and then we can install the spoiler. All right, so with that in place, we're going to need these 4 10mm screws. I think they're 10mm, not really sure. We'll check them in a minute. Nuts, I guess I should say. Handy. And we can go ahead and remove these covers that we had during the paint process. So what we're going to have here, we've got this pin that snaps in, and then he's got a little felt washer insulator. Same thing on here, same thing on here. Big one on here. Small one on this clip. One here, and one here. And then the next thing we're going to do, we'll set all this stuff aside. Now we're going to take all these backing pieces off these adhesive strips, and we're going to carefully remove them. This is automotive trim type adhesive, so it's super strong. So you're going to have to get this right the first time. Go ahead and keep this on here so nothing scratches anything. All right, and then this top piece is just like a seal that doesn't have any adhesive. All right. At this point, you got one shot. So what we're going to do is we're going to get these clips in these 9mm holes lined up first. So I'm going to go do this one. And then we're going to also make sure that our wiring harness is routed through. And then we're going to do the 9mm clip on the other end. Okay, so now we've got each of those 9mm clips lined up. We've got each of the studs going in the 8s. We've got our cable in, so at this point, and we got our center. So all of our holes look good, so I'm going to do the center first. And I'm going to come over here and do the outside edge. That outside edge. All right. Now, take all this stuff out of the way. We're going to open this up. And we're going to take these fasteners, these nuts, and we can see the studs. We have access to them, right? One here. One here. While I'm in here, I can see, is this a 10 like I thought? Yes, it is. So we can just hand tighten these for now. There's no torque value provided in these instructions for these 4 nuts. So we're just going to snug them down good and tight with a wrench here in just a minute. One here. And the last one right here. And that's it. And then we can move on to the next step in the instructions. All right, so I'm going to go grab a ratchet. We're just going to snug these up, and then we'll continue. All right, guys, just to give you the fitment after pushing this into place. All right, this is about what you should be seeing along these edges. It's going to be a very, very slight overhang, but that's verified by a factory RPO D59 unit that we had in the salvage yard, like I mentioned. So you should be able to feel your fingernail running through a separation between the trunk lid and the top edge of the spoiler. That's normal. Just to kind of give you that view, just so you can see. All right, the next thing they want us to do is deal with the fact that the spoiler has now changed the weight on the trunk lid, so the torsion bars have to be increased. So they're telling you to get something to prop the trunk lid up so that it doesn't fall down on you. And then they're saying they're going to give you a view called A on the outside of each hinge, B on the inside of each hinge, and then C right in the middle. And so what they want you to do first is, on these torsion bars, they're showing you that from the inside of the hinge view, it's sitting like this in the dotted lines, and they want you to use a tool to get it propped down. Now, they don't specify what the tool is, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our 10mm that we used to put those 4 nuts in, and I'm going to stick the end of the torsion bar in that, and that's going to be our lever. What they show you with the tool is grabbing what I just said and then lifting it and pulling it into this position, and then they're telling you to repeat it on the other side. Notice that the colors on these are light gray and black. And if we look ahead, what we'll see, I'm just going to skip over, either here or here, we'll see a view that says the top torsion bar is indicated by the black color and the bottom torsion bar is indicated by the gray. And so you'll see in all these ideograms, they'll show these 2 colors signifying left and right. These 2 torsion bars are left and right specific. They're not the same. So black here on this view B, gray on this view B. Now, for some reason, they weren't consistent in this particular picture. They didn't color it at all. But you get the point that tends to be what they're using to distinguish it. You also have to note that they don't always indicate this, the same steps. So just pay attention to the shapes rather than the numbers. All right, let me go down here at the camera and show you what they're talking about. So let me go grab a flashlight and we'll go dive in. All right, so if you've got a cargo net, you're going to need to get that out of the way because you're going to need to be able to get in here on both sides. And then if we just kind of look under here, you can see I put a piece of blue tape under here to indicate the top torsion bar from the bottom. So this was view C in the instructions, and you want to get it back the way the factory did. So you notice if we follow these over here, they cross. And we want to make sure we maintain that crossing. Now if we get some light in here, we can find something that is magnetic. So we can see, hopefully, if I take the tool I was referring to, I'm hanging it on the end of this. And so now we're going to get you a better view in a minute, but that's the end of the spring on this view A, with this being the hinge. So view A is on the other side of the hinge. View B is on this side of the hinge. We haven't done the view B, which is going to be this loopy part. We're doing the kind of curved straight part. So let me swing at the camera and get you a view on the other side of this hinge. All right, so again, and this is the view B when you're on this side of the hinge. We're going to come back to this in a minute with this inner loop, but for this outer one, all we're interested in is getting it off this little ridge. So they're suggesting a tool, and we're improvising with like a socket. I don't know if this is the best way to get it off of that, though. Yeah, I guess it is. All right, so we got the tension off. We're going to go do the same thing on the other side. All right, so then we're going to do 17, which is to, again, view B on the inside of the hinge. We're going to do the left side. We're going to get this little spring to let go of this bar. They're showing a screwdriver. You'll see it better when I show it to you. And then we're going to do the right side. And then in the next step on 18, there's a little clip holding the one that we released in the first step. We're going to have to get that opened up. There's like a lock, so we've got to spread it. They show you using a screwdriver to spread that lock, and then that bar will come out of there. And then 19, we're going to remove each of these torsion bars from this little retainer here. And once we get them snapped out of there, 20, this little piece here will slide out, and this little piece will slide out, and we'll be able to then remove the bar. And then all they're showing here is you begin to reverse the process. You start by installing the top one first, sticking it in, and then sticking this one in, and they're showing you to make sure you get that crossing that we showed in the beginning. So basically, this is the last step. They're not going to show it exactly the same. They're just going to reverse all these pictures in the order we just did, right? So then you're going to snap it in, then you're going to get this middle clip. Although they don't show it, you're going to need to get a pair of pliers and pinch it closed again because we spread it apart. Then we're going to get it snapped into that clip, and then we're going to get it folded back up and lifted onto that little ledge, and that's going to complete this step. And then we're going to go inside. All right, now for step 17, this little clip so we can get the rod to come out. They suggested putting a screwdriver in here and coaxing this rod out like that. And now we'll go do the same thing on the other side. All right, so step 18, this little guy here. So he'll only travel so far because there's a lock in the form of this little piece of sheet metal is bent over and fits in that notch. So what they're telling you is you got to stick a screwdriver in here and bend it up enough so that you can clear this, right? So we want to clear it in this direction. I don't know if I got it enough with that. Nope. A little bit more. This one's tricky. There's also one on the other side. See if we can get that one to let go a little bit. There we go. And now that you see this, you can see there's the little lock piece. So all we're going to do is we'll close that back in when we install the new spring. All right, step 19. We're going to come up here and we're going to get this torsion bar to let go of this top slot. All right, and then it kind of came out on its own, but if we scroll around here, you know, what they want you to do is push it out of this little hole here, right? This one just kind of came out. So with that done, this guy is just going to come right out. And then the same thing on the bottom one, we've just got to get it to let go of this little bracket. And then if you look over on the far right and zoom in, we're going to slide it out of that little hole, and it's just going to drop down. All right. Now we're going to go in the box that our kit had for the spoiler. And we're going to get the replacement ones. They're color-coded. They got a stripe of blue paint and a stripe of yellow paint. I think, just looking at it here, just kind of eyeballing it, this looks like this one. So blue goes on top, kind of ironically the way we have it. And then this guy is going to go in the back. And so that's how we're going to reverse it. Right? So we're just going to go up here. We're going to work him in this hole. Get up in there, guy. I don't know what the devil is stuck on the back side. Let me see if I can get where the camera is. All right. Now we'll take the new one. There's like a little ridge on the back that makes it a pisser for lining this up. There he goes. All right. All right, and then we'll go do the front one and do the same thing on the other side. We'll move the camera and do the same shot. All right, now we'll take the blue one, blue color code one. We'll get him locked in here, making sure he crosses on the front. So we got this down and we got this down. And if we pan over to the other side, we can now take this guy, push him back up in here, and then we'll have to get a pair of pliers to kind of close that. I already did the other side by accident, pinched it and forgot to do this side. And that'll get us back with this little safety lock thing. There we go. All right, now let's go back to the instructions to see which of these torsion bars we lock in first. All right, so we've done 19 and 20. That removed the old ones. Now we've done 21 on both sides. We've snapped it in. We've done 22. On 23, they're kind of showing using the screwdriver again to pry that clip up, but we used pliers. 24, they want you now to insert it into that little clip that holds on this bracket that has like this U-shaped opening, which is, we look under here, that's this guy right here, right? So we want to do that piece. That piece. Okay, and then after we complete that, then we can pull this lever piece up and restore the tension. All right, so this guy's going to come up, and he has definitely got more tension than the last one. Oh, there's that one. And there's that one. And I think that's it for these springs. All right, and so with that out of the way, we can remove our little prop rod. All we did here was use like a paint roller handle. And what we want to make sure of, right, so if you have this thing closed part way, you want there to be enough tension to hold this. All right, so everything's working fine there. All right, let's go see what the next step is. All right, that's it for the springs. You're going to move the vehicle to where you can get inside the rear doors. Now I'm going to show you this section, but we're not going to do it in the order it's shown. So steps 26, 27, and 28 are about getting access to the package shelf on the back where the third brake light is. They're telling you to hit this lever so you can bring the seat down, remove these 3 trim clips to take this center piece out, this 1 clip to take this piece out, and then they're telling you this piece up here where the airbag is located, they're telling you to peel that back, unhook this little guy here and remove this, and that's going to give you the ability to get under this package shelf and get the third brake light. We're going to do that not in this order. We're going to skip. We're going to go ahead and look at 29. So 29 says to locate the third brake light, disconnect the wiring harness. Then they want you to go back in and put a block-off plate in place of that light. That's what 30 is, going underneath the package shelf, and then 31 is removing the third brake light and installing a block-off plate that's included with the kit. We're going to skip 30 and 31, so we're going to do 29, and then we're going to do 32, which is to take the harness that's included in the kit and connect up the third brake light on the spoiler with the the harness that we just removed from the factory third brake light. This foam sponge tape is to prevent rattles. It is not included in the kit. If you remember when we first started this project, there were some things you had to supply. One of them is the foam tape. It's one of the things you have to bring to the party. And then after you get this plugged in, then you're going to route it down along the factory position, and they include some zip ties to secure it. And they're just showing you another view of where all they want these zip ties. And then you can reinstall the rear insulation cover and the trunk latch cover, and you would be done. In our case, we're going to do this first, finish up in the trunk, and then go inside and remove the old third brake light. That's an important step because in some states, if you have this here and it's inoperative, you'll fail inspection. If you have this here and it's inoperative, you'll get a citation in some states. So GM has to tell you, remove it. So let's go ahead and get this hooked up in the back. Now before we do anything, we're going to go inside and we're going to make sure this actually works so that we don't have a wiring harness problem. So let me go inside and make sure the third brake light works. And it does. So we're good to go. All right, let's start with disconnecting this wiring harness. So using the mirror here, you can see there's a big circular opening, and then there's the harness connector if we zoom in right there. And that top part of the connector is what you're going to pinch down. So you're just going to grab it on the top and the bottom, and it's going to let go. All right, so now we got this guy off. That's all we wanted to do. Now we're going to hook up the harness that came in the kit, which is this guy here. Get rid of this little rubber band deal. All right, so the connector that we had here is going to go in here. And then the connector on the spoiler is going to go in here. So we got to watch where the little locks are. All right, so at this point, before we even zip tie it, we should be able to close it back down and verify that it works again. Of course, our massively powerful springs are not going to let this guy stay down, so we're just going to see if we can close it and check it. But before we do anything, need to make sure everything's good. All right, great. Now we can zip tie it. So we'll put that foam on in a minute, but just trying to see where they might want it to go. So we're just going to route it right along here for the top part. So they give you a little bag of these zip ties. And a child-proof wrapping of the rubber band, I guess. Jesus. All right. See how many we got here. So they're giving us 3, 6, 9, 10. 10 zip ties that they want us to use. And the locations they wanted us to use them on. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 along the trunk hinge, and then 1, 2, 3 along the bottom. So we've got some extras. So we only need to use 7. So I'm going to get those into position. Oh, actually, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of the ones they gave us. I'm going to get these in position, get some foam tape, and then we'll come back. I'll show you where all these are. All right, guys, now that we've tested that the third brake light is working on the rear spoiler, now you can see we've come in and we've put the foam tape on this connection, and then we've got one zip tie here, one here, one here, and one here, which the 4 they're showing. I haven't done them all the way tight yet because we still need to make the connection. Now that the testing's done, we can go ahead and disconnect this again from the brake light, because we're going to need to take this connector and we're going to need to pull it through when we get the back package shelf lifted up and reroute it to the side over here on the fender trim area. The other thing that we've got in our kit, the last major part, would be this guy here, which is the block-off plate. So we'll go ahead and take that into the back seat with us. This guy is going to end up using the same mounting screws, and he's going to take the place of what's currently there, block it off, make everything legal and legit. All right, to get these release locks up, we're going to press, and then we can pull these seats forward. We're going to have to do both sides in order to reveal these trim clips that we saw in those steps. So I'm going to go do the other side, then we'll come back and start removing these clips. All right, just like we did in the trunk, we're going to have to get the center clip up, and then we can get the actual pin off on all 3 of these. That'll let us take this guy off. It's like a little clip or something on there. There we go. Yeah, so these clips should have came off with this. They kind of just let go of the metal for some reason. This guy should have stayed on there. All right, now we're going to take off this guy. This type we just need to pull forward. I think. Unless it's kind of wedged back in there. Let me move the camera and look behind this trim. Don't want to break anything. All right. It's just a stubborn Christmas tree clip. All right. And now it says this should come forward. Actually, on ours, that's not what's happening. But I don't know if we need to fight with it because we just want to be able to get under here. So let's go ahead and take a look at what they were talking about in step 28, which had to do with this airbag cover. So I'm just going to see if I can peek back here. Yeah, let me get a flashlight. I think I see what they were referring to in the picture. All right, guys, so for step 27 and pulling this guy, it doesn't appear in the picture that it's reflecting the fact that this one's got a bolster airbag on it right here, right? It's this little tag here. So this is, if you look down here where my finger is, this says airbag. So this is part of the airbag assembly on this 2015 Sonic that we're working on here. So just removing this one clip isn't going to cut it to remove this. However, I don't think that's a problem for getting this or this out. So we're just going to leave it like this, and we're going to see how things go. For this guy, when they show you on step 28, and they show you where this airbag writing is on this trim piece, they're talking about looking at this clip here, and they're trying to tell you that you take a screwdriver and you nudge it on the end, and then you push it in this direction to let it go. The thing that's not immediately obvious, though, is, at least on this vehicle, that this is not facing the rear. It's facing the front of the vehicle. So let me show you on a camera view what I'm talking about here. So up in the top here, just to show you where we're coming in with the camera, we're going to come in right through here. Let me get situated where I can hold this and work this. All right. So you see where it says here, this passenger side door airbag right there. Right there is the clip, the black part on the gray trim that you've got to push down with the screwdriver and then slide towards the front of the vehicle, and that will disengage this clip. So that's what they're referring to. So the drawing makes you think it's going to be facing the front. This little guy here is going to be facing the front. You're going to push it down and then push it towards the trunk, but it's the opposite. It's going to be facing in the direction of the trunk, and you're going to push it down and push this black clip towards the front of the vehicle to get it to go out of this. Otherwise, as you try to pull this gray trim, it's pulling on this airbag piece. Now that we've taken a look at what's behind in the back seat, this panel, and we can see how this airbag cable that fits into the other side of this panel is connected, we can see how to get this off. We still got to see if we can get these off without removing this, but I did pull up the service manual to show you some additional information, so let's take a look at that. All right, I got a couple of these pages in the service manual. They're a little bit more detailed than the GM instructions for the spoiler accessory. So just to kind of show you the same thing in the service manual, so they still show removing this back trim panel with the 3 push pin type fasteners the same. And then when we take the next step, which are these side pieces, I think that's between here and here. Sorry guys, there's just a lot of different pages here, right? So they talk about removing this piece the same as well. So they tell you there's 1 push pin, and then they just imply this comes off. But when you read the directions, they actually highlight that you can't get this piece off without removing another piece that's down here by the carpet right here, this carpet retainer. So the manual, excuse me, the instructions for the spoiler didn't talk about removing this piece, but it looks like it just snaps out without any fasteners. But it doesn't mention anything about the airbag that's sitting here, just like it didn't mention anything in the spoiler instructions. But we take a look at the airbag section of the service manual, and we do see now what they're saying about that. So they're telling you that when you want to pull this off, this airbag, this is called a bolster, this comes out by pulling it very hard from the top. So it actually does disengage up here when you just yank it towards the back of the front seat, and then it fits in down here. And so that gets this guy off, and then there's going to be a connector down here. This is looking like a lot of work that I don't know that I want to get involved with, because I'd have to pull that, and then according to this, it's kind of assuming that you already did it, because it doesn't even mention taking care of that. But it's then saying pull the pin, and then they're telling you that you got to remove the shoulder belt fastener. So that's a lot of work to get in here, right? So there's the bottom part of the belt. There's the top part of the belt that's going up through here. What we're going to try and do is we're just going to leave this in with just pulling this pin so we get a little bit of play. When we take a look at this other piece, Let me show that side piece, find out where I marked that guy. Yeah, when we go to get this guy off, they don't show you in the picture, but at the bottom here, there's about a 2-inch long alignment prong that fits into a hole in the sheet metal. And without being able to get this guy out of the way, we can't get that out without damaging this trim panel. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to just let this thing flippy flop around over here. All we need is the back of it released so that we can then pull the actual panel trim, the window panel trim piece out. Right? So that guy, the same 3 fasteners that were holding the front plate, hold this guy, and then he's got 6 additional push pins, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2 in the back here that you'll see when we get in that are holding him down. He should just pop up. And with that popped up, what we'll find, again, you got to jump around the manual here to get this other detail. You'll find that 2 things. This is this, and then this. We'll find that all we got to do then is pull these 2 fasteners from the back side of the third brake light. So once we get this thing here lifted up, we can see that, and then we can pop our backing plate in and use the same 2 fasteners to secure it. I think they're 7mm hex head. We'll have to get in there and see. The picture makes it look like it's a Torx, but it doesn't have any torque value, so it's just going to be a Guten-tight kind of situation. But we just got to get our hand up in there enough to get these 2 out, and we're done. Then we can reroute the wiring harness the way they want us to do. And one of the things that we noticed on this other page, and this is the last thing I'll show you here, that's not in the instructions for the spoiler, when they talked about this side panel here, they don't show that little clip with that cable, and that cable's on there so that when the airbag blows, this panel doesn't go flying into the face of some rear passenger, right? So they've got that little kind of retainer holding on to it that we have to disconnect. But they mentioned that you need to disable the supplemental inflatable restraint system. That's the airbag. They want you to disable that before messing around with this. It doesn't say that in the spoiler instructions. I'm not sure why, but we're going to go with what the service manual says, and that's pretty simple. That's the last thing I'm going to show you before we hit it here. And to disable the airbag system, you got 2 options. You can either pull the fuse. In some cases, you might not want to disable electricity to the entire system. Maybe you're going to get some state inspection done. You don't want to clear out all the emission control tests that have been done. But we don't care about that, so we're going to use the option to pull the negative battery cable. We're basically going to de-energize the whole car. But you have 2 options here, right? You can either pull the airbag fuse if you locate that, or you can do the negative battery cable. We're going to do this. And by the way, they tell you to... I saw in here somewhere. Here it is. You got to wait 2 minutes. So just 2 minutes to let all the power discharge from various capacitors. Then everything's safe. 10mm. And that will de-energize the airbag. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and pull this piece of trim off. There's a couple of clips in the front here. I'm just going to give it a yank. Just like any other piece of trim. And then if you take the camera over and look on top, we can see this little contraption is associated with this clip. And that's what they want. They suggest you use a screwdriver, but you can just get your finger back here and give this guy a push. And this little contraption comes off. Just like that. And so normally then we would be able to pull this out, right? But we're held in here. Now, like I said, in the service manual, they say you can get this bolster to come off by just pulling it sharply forward. Like that. It's got this little clip here. And then somehow get in here and see if we can get enough space to get this to let go, to pull out. That was what I was referring to. Because I don't want to yank the whole thing off. I don't want to take this off, and I don't want to take the airbag off. So all I'm trying to do is see, is this held in by a pin or something we can just get it to come off just enough to get this panel to let go. There we go. All right, and that way we can leave the rest of this alone. We can leave this in here, We'll do the same thing on the passenger side. Here's your airbag right here, by the way. And then here's that little contraption. And then we should be able to get this piece lifted up enough to get in the back. So let's just go do the same thing on the passenger side that we just did here. All right, first thing we're going to do, these little covers that cover the child seat latches, they're going to go flying when we pull this off. So I'm just going to try to see if I can tape them down. I don't even know if this tape will stay. Nope, it looks like it's not going to stick. There's too much Armor All or something back here. Oh well, that was an idea. We'll just have to watch these so they don't go flying. All right, underneath are going to be two kinds of clips. These gray and yellow type. Older ones like 2012, 2013, they're blue and green, but they're very similar. These kind of push-in type clips. I'll show you one of them. There's two in the front here that we have to get off first. We can even get our hand to fit under here. You can see that guy right there. So right about here, right there, and right there. And those are the two we're going to have to get off. Then we can get our hand underneath, and between our hand and a trim tool like this, with a long reach, we can go back and pop the others off and get all 6 left so that we can get to our prize, which are the 2 fasteners that are right behind that ridge of plastic. All right, passenger side now. I didn't take this pin out last time because I wasn't sure we were going to pursue this. Just a regular fir tree pin. Going to give this guy a pull down, just like we did on the driver's side, or passenger side rather, and this is the driver's side. If you look inside here, you can see there's just a pinch clip that holds this metal bar. Now, if this breaks, either of these 2 pins, you're going to have to replace this piece for safety reasons, but we're okay. Nothing's wrong. All right, now we're going to go pull this off, just like we did on the passenger side. Nice and slow and easy. But when you do it, give it a little pull like you see me doing, just to get the clips to let go. Then we're going to come in here like we did on the other side, push that little tab in from the back. Come on. This one's more stubborn. I don't know why. This one I might need to go grab a tool. Let me just take this little trim tool and see if that helps. Well, that guy does not want to come off. All right, let me see if I can see what we're obstructed on here. Yeah, it looks like there's just like a little piece of flash of plastic that's grabbing this piece. Manufacturing defect. All right. A piece of tape that somebody left in there when they made this. All right, then we're going to go grab that same trim tool we used on the passenger side, and we're going to try to work off this cover just enough to get this top piece to let go. There we go. Went even easier than the passenger side. All right, now we're ready to go after this. I'm going to start with this one since I'm already on this side. So remember I told you these pins are right here. I'm touching it with my finger. So I'm going to see if I can get my hand under here. All right, so there's the pin. So it's very much like a door pin. When I get this up, you'll see that it kind of slides in. And the reason it's propped up is there's like some alignment pins as well. You see how these little doors want to go flying? All right. Let me grab our flashlight here if I can see what we did with it. And now we have a better view back here. I think we got enough room where we can go in and get a ratchet back there. So let me go get a ratchet wrench so we can try to reach those 2 fasteners, and then also we can get ready to pull this wiring harness through. You know, actually, guys, instead of just trying to work with this obstruction, I'm just going to remove it. So slide the seat belt off of this split, and at the back there's like a tongue that's going into two slits in the very back of the sheet metal. And so just pull it forward, and it should just work its way out through the door. Now let me flip it around. I'm surprised we didn't lose any of these little latch doors. All right, here we go. And then see here, you can see there's the yellow pins I was talking about. Here's the gray pins. We had one that fell off. Let's go grab that while we got it before we forget. And we'll snap that back in. Just like that. And they're supposed to be retained by that little guy and not come off, but sometimes they'll pop off. And they're designed, as you can see, where it doesn't take much for them to let go. So we've got 1, 2, 3 on this side, and 1, 2, 3 on that side. So all done with this. Let me go stow this, and we'll come back and finish the wiring harness. All right, let's swap out this center high mount stop lamp. It is a 7mm fastener on both sides. And it's, as you can see, it's mounted directly to that window trim panel. We used to call them in the old days a package shelf. And you can see at the bottom, there's like some retaining latches. So when we put our replacement piece in, we're going to use those same retaining latches to hold that securely. And that's it, guys. No torque value. We're just going to do good and tight. And then we can go back now and do the last piece, which is the wire routing. And then we can put this guy back in and reassemble everything. Finish up with the zip ties in the trunk, and we're done. Right, so you go in the back and you route your cable up through this little hole right here. Right here. If we zoom in, there's a hole right here. Let me get you some light. There's a round hole right here in the back, and that's where they're talking about they want this routed. All right, and so this cable is long enough to come over here and make a connection again on this side. We're going to need to wrap some foam tape around that, and then we're going to need to put some of the rest of our zip ties around here to hold it in position. So I'm going to block your view for just a moment. Do one there. Do one over here. And we'll do one right here. This is just really to keep it from rattling around. Now we got everything where we want it. Make it nice and tight. The other thing you want to do, you see all this up here, perspiration, because it's a nice, hot, humid day in July here. You want to clean all that up because not all of this sheet metal is fully painted. And that's all it's going to take to start corrosion is some salt water coming from your body. So wherever you see that, get rid of it. Otherwise, a few years down the road, you could end up with some rust under here that you do not want. All right, I'm going to get some foam tape. We'll get a pair of snips to cut these tails off, and then we'll reassemble everything. All right, we're going to cut a new piece of foam tape for back here. This is very thin foam tape for this specific purpose of insulating for electrical connector noise. This is not like something you put on your window. You don't pick this up at the hardware store. The product I use is called Hushmat Quiet Tape. It's specifically for securing wires and cables to get rid of vibrations and rattles. This is what some dealerships use. There's other brands too, but I'll put a link to this one in the description. All right, so it's single-sided adhesive instead of double. A lot of what you pick up in the hardware store, in addition to being too thick, is going to be double-sided. And all we want to do is we want to wrap it around this connector so as you're driving down the road, you don't get this kind of crap going on, right? All right. And now, it might still bump, but you're not going to hear it as sharply. All right, and again with the perspiration. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start putting stuff back together. I'm not going to show all that because it's not really useful. It's just the reverse of what we did, but we're first going to bring this window panel back in. All right, guys, we got everything buttoned back up. It's actually very hard to see this with the block-off plate compared to the red there, but that makes it all legal and legit. When you're putting this panel back in, make sure you have those pins lined up. If you don't line them up, they can break. If you have that happen or you lose one, it rolls down behind into the frame area, I'll put part numbers for those replacement clips in the description below. Also remember when you put your side panels in that you reconnect those tethered clips that are part of the airbag system, right? It's very important that you do that. Let's go ahead and hook the battery back up and do some final testing and wrap up. All right, at this point we can reconnect the battery cable, negative cable rather, gets torqued to 40 inch-pounds. And now we're ready to go test everything. All right, we've given the brake light a test. Everything still works. We're coming down with the zip ties. I just want to show you that last part of the instructions talked about zip tying to this harness behind this little carpet area, right? So we can see we've zip tied it in the 3 positions they wanted there. And then there's the little hole that we routed it into. And so it sits nice behind here. At this point, we've also reinstalled the liner to the trunk and put all the push pins in. And so we're on the last step, 34 at that point. So I just showed you this routing here and this routing here on 33. 34, we've put this back in. Last piece is this guy right here. Remember I told you when we took this apart, we noticed that the prong on this side is broken off. So we're going to take that opportunity to replace that. This is a GM part 1350 9528. Right, and so now we can see how those prongs are supposed to look. There's supposed to be one on each side to hold it securely. And we'll just take that guy and snap him in. And we're done, guys. That is the end of adding the genuine GM spoiler option to your Chevrolet Sonic for the model years that I list in the video title and description. I hope this helped you out in accomplishing this. You can still find these. I'll put links in the description where you can still order these. These are discontinued from GM, but they're still out there for sale from various places. How you can get this installed yourself. It's really definitely a DIY possible job. If you have questions or comments, leave them below and I'll try to help. If I did save you some money and I did teach you something here, pay it forward and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for watching.